The Hudson Valley in late September smells like crushed apples and the slow surrender of summer. The maples along Osage Ridge Road are burning gold and copper, the river low and silver between its banks, the sky a shade of blue that only comes in the weeks before everything dies beautifully. It is the kind of afternoon that makes people feel that the world is orderly and permanent, and theirs. On the hill above Millbrook, behind iron gates and a quarter-mile of paved driveway lined with oaks that were planted in 1930, the Voss family is hosting the wedding of the decade. 3 white tents. String lights woven through the old trees like a second constellation. A string quartet beneath a pavilion draped in white linen. Tables set with crystal that catches the afternoon light and throws small rainbows across the guests, who are 300 in number, dressed in the particular way of people who have never once in their lives had to check a price tag before deciding whether they could afford something. Nobody notices the woman who arrives alone. She parks a modest dark blue sedan across the road, which is itself a quiet scandal in a lot full of Range Rovers and Maseratis and one extraordinary vintage Bentley that belongs to a man who considers himself to have good taste because he has always had enough money to buy it. She steps out in a fitted navy dress, elegant and completely unstated, nothing that screams money, nothing that even whispers it. Low heels. Natural hair, pulled back. A single slim watch on her left wrist, not flashy, not cheap, the watch of a person who values precision over display. She carries a leather briefcase, the kind that belongs in a courthouse hallway, not a reception tent. She stands at the gate for a moment. Her right hand reaches out. Her fingers find the iron scrollwork of the crest mounted at eye level, an oak tree with a river running beneath it, the design precise and deliberate, commissioned by someone who intended it to last forever. Her fingers trace the shape of it. The river. The roots of the tree. The initials worked into the base of the design, so. Her jaw tightens. Just slightly. Just for a second, as if she is swallowing something. Then she pushes the gate open and walks through it. Her name is Simone Osei. She is 44 years old. She has not been to this place in 22 years. She knows which flagstone near the east path is loose. She avoids it without looking down. She is perhaps 30 feet inside the property, moving along the boxwood-lined garden path with the quiet familiarity of someone relearning a language they never actually forgot, when Cordelia Voss notices her. Cordelia is the architecture of this afternoon. She has been awake since 5, overseeing the florist, repositioning the seating chart twice, redirecting the caterers, and managing her husband Reginald's drinking with the practiced efficiency of a woman who has been doing exactly that for 33 years. She is 62 years old and carries every year of it like a crown, upright, intentional, unyielding. Her cream Valentino suit is worth more than most people make in a month. Her hair is silver blonde and has been set so precisely it looks sculpted. Her eyes are pale blue and miss very little. They do not miss Simone. Excuse me. Her voice does not rise. It does not need to. The quality of it, cool, certain, accustomed to being obeyed, carries itself across the garden. Guests within earshot turn. The string quartet's bow catches a half-beat. You there? Excuse me. Simone stops. She turns. Her face is, and remains, perfectly composed. Cordelia approaches with the unhurried authority of someone who has never once been uncertain of their welcome anywhere. Behind her come 3 of her closest friends in the loose formation that wealthy women at events sometimes unconsciously adopt: Pamela Drexler in a green cocktail dress with an emerald at her throat, stiff-faced Garrison Alt holding his bourbon, and a young woman named Blythe, who has the specific confidence of a person who has been beautiful and rich her entire life and has not yet encountered a situation those 2 qualities couldn't handle. This is a private event, Cordelia says. She stops 6 feet from Simone and looks at her the way a customs officer looks at a bag that has triggered a flag, not rudely, exactly, but with a systematic attention that implies the subject is already suspected of something. I don't believe I know you. My name is Simone Osei. That tells me very little. Who invited you? I invited myself. A beat of silence. Cordelia tilts her head by perhaps 2 degrees, which is, for her, the equivalent of a sharp intake of breath. I beg your pardon? I apologize if that sounds abrupt. I can explain, if you'd like. What I'd like, Cordelia says, is for you to leave. This is private property. These are private guests. I have no idea who you are or how you got past the gate, but I'm going to need you to turn around and go back the way you came. Of course. Simone's voice is the texture of still water. As you wish. But she doesn't turn toward the gate. She turns toward the garden path. The eastern one. The narrow, stone-laid walk partially hidden by a tall row of boxwood that most guests, navigating this property for the first time today, would have no reason to know exists. She takes it without hesitation, without consulting anything, without a single glance at the directional signage the wedding coordinator has posted throughout the grounds. How does she know that path? Cordelia says. Pamela leans close. She must have done reconnaissance. Probably looked up the property online. These people always do their homework. Cordelia watches Simone's back disappear around the curve of the boxwood. Follow her, she says to Raymond, her head of security, who has been standing near the fountain since the event began. Raymond is ex-military, built for the express purpose of not being moved by things that unsettle other people. He has worked for the Voss family for 6 years and has, in that time, handled gatecrashers, a threatening ex-boyfriend, an uninvited journalist, and the time Reginald fell into the ornamental pond. He is not a man who hesitates. He hesitates now. It is very brief, no more than 2 or 3 seconds, but it is visible, and Cordelia notices it, and it bothers her in a way she cannot immediately name. Raymond, she says. Yes, ma'am. He goes. The strange behavior of the staff begins almost immediately, and it begins in the way that truly unsettling things often begin, so subtly that for the first few minutes, you think you might be imagining it. Ferris, the head catering manager, is 40 years old and has overseen upward of 200 events at various estates throughout the Hudson Valley. He is the kind of professional who prides himself on invisibility, a ghost who ensures everything works perfectly without ever appearing to do anything at all. He has managed this specific property 7 times in the past 12 years. He knows its rhythms, which refrigeration unit trips on hot days, how to talk the florist down from creative panic. He does not rattle. He rounds the corner near the carriage house carrying a tray of bruschetta and very nearly walks directly into Simone Osei, who is standing still, looking at the stone wall along the south garden. The tray tilts. 2 pieces slide toward the edge. Ferris does not notice because he is looking at Simone's face with an expression entirely inappropriate to a catering manager at a wedding reception, an expression of recognition and guilt and something very close to grief, all compressed into a face that clearly wishes it were somewhere else entirely. Miss, he starts. He stops. Swallows. Rearranges his face into something professional. Looks, with real desperation, to see if Cordelia Voss is nearby. Excuse me, he says, and retreats around the corner with the speed of a man who understands that whatever just happened is above his pay grade. Then there is the matter of the 2 housekeepers. They appear at the ground floor window of the main house, a wide casement window that overlooks the south garden, within 10 minutes of Simone's arrival. They are not cleaning the window. They are not retrieving anything from the room behind it. They are standing at the glass, side by side, watching. One of them has her hand pressed flat against the window. The other has both of hers folded at her chest and appears to be praying. And then there is Ezra Donatelli. Ezra is 73 years old and has worked this land for 42 of them. He is a compact, weathered man who moves slowly now because he has given most of his speed to 4 decades of physical labor, digging, planting, hauling, shaping the earth of this property with his hands season after season until he knows it the way a blind man knows the furniture of his own house. His father worked this land before him, hired in 1949 when work was hard to find and good wages were harder. He has always known things about this place that he has never said out loud. He is raking the stone path along the reflecting pool when Simone comes around the corner of the carriage house. He doesn't hear her at first. Then something, a shift in the quality of the afternoon, a change in the light, a sound that is too familiar and too impossible, makes him stop. He turns around. He sees her. Ezra Donatelli's rake drops against the stone with a sound like a small bell. His right hand reaches up and removes the cap from his head. He holds it against his chest with both hands, and his eyes fill with water so fast it seems almost involuntary, the way eyes fill in cold wind or bright sun, a physical response the body makes before the mind tells it not to. "Miss Simone," he says. His voice is barely more than a breath. "Hello, Ezra. Lord have mercy." He shakes his head slowly. "You look just like him. Just exactly like him. People always said that." Something warm moves through her voice, something that has been absent since she walked through the gate. "The roses on the south wall are beautiful. The climbing ones. Your mother planted those." He straightens slightly. "Your mother planted those in 1993. I never let anybody touch them. Not once. New gardeners would ask and I'd tell them those were Adwoa's roses and they were to be left as they were." His voice catches. "I kept them for you." Simone looks at him for a long moment. "Thank you, Ezra." Cordelia arrives. She has been following at a distance and has seen enough of this exchange to understand that something is happening she doesn't have the context for, which is precisely what makes it dangerous. She plants herself between Simone and Ezra like a wall. "Ezra." Her voice is flat and cold and final. "Get back to the south garden. Now." Ezra Donatelli looks at Cordelia Voss. He has looked at her this way before, with a quiet, comprehensive assessment that he has never once put into words in 6 years of her giving him orders. He puts his cap back on, picks up his rake, and walks away. But before he turns the corner, he looks back once at Simone and gives her a nod. Small, certain, deliberate. The nod of a man who has been waiting a long time to give it. Cordelia turns on Simone. "What did you say to him? What are you doing to my staff?" "I was admiring the roses. My entire staff is behaving as if they've seen a ghost." Cordelia steps closer. "I don't know what your game is, but I want you off this property in the next 3 minutes or I'm calling the police." "Of course," Simone says. For the second time. They escort her out properly this time, Raymond and a second guard named Curtis, flanking her with professional courtesy that is really professional humiliation, walking the full length of the driveway in view of guests who have gathered to watch. Cordelia coordinates this from a position of maximum visibility, making sure the maximum number of people understand what is happening and what it means. "Some people have absolutely no concept of private property," she announces to Pamela, loudly, as Simone passes a cluster of guests near the rose arbor. "Simply no shame," Pamela agrees, at the same volume. Garrison Alt watches from near the bar. "Should have called the police immediately. The audacity." The group of guests near the champagne station exchange glances and murmured commentary that grows bolder as Simone moves further away, the specific mechanics of crowd cruelty, where each voice makes the next one feel more permitted. Walking in like she owns the place. These things happen when security isn't tight enough. You simply cannot be too careful about who you let through the gate. Simone walks through all of it with her spine straight and her face still. She does not hurry. She does not look back. She says nothing. There is a quality to her silence that Raymond finds deeply unsettling, not empty but full, holding something at a temperature you can't quite identify. She steps through the gate. Crosses the road. Opens the trunk of her dark blue sedan. Raymond has followed to the gate. He watches her remove a second folder from her briefcase, this one thicker, bound in black leather, sealed with a brass clasp engraved with something small and official-looking he cannot read from this distance. "Ma'am," Raymond says quietly. "Just the two of them, the road, the late afternoon light. I apologize for my part in that." Simone looks at him. Her expression is measured but not unkind. "You were doing your job," she says. "I recognized you. I thought I did. I should have said something. Where would you have been if you had?" She looks at the gate. At the crest. Sometimes the most important thing is to document what happens when no one thinks anyone important is watching. Raymond takes that in slowly. Are you going back in? He asks. She picks up the black leather folder. She looks at the iron gate with the oak tree and the river and the letters SO worked into its base. Something moves across her face, not triumph, not anger, something older and more patient than either. Yes, she says. I am. Raymond steps back and holds the gate open. Simone sets up at an empty table at the reception's edge. She opens the leather folder, removes the documents inside with methodical precision, and begins to read them with the focused attention of someone who has read 10,000 documents and knows exactly what to look for. She uncaps a pen. She begins making notes on a yellow legal pad. Her handwriting is small and exact. The effect on the reception is approximately what you'd expect from a smoke grenade in a cathedral. Cordelia's voice, when she sees it, bypasses all of her carefully maintained composure and goes somewhere rawer. She came back. She is sitting down. Is she reading legal documents? Pamela stares openly. At my son's wedding reception. Cordelia's hands close into fists at her sides. This woman is sitting at a table at my son's wedding reception reading legal documents. She marches across the lawn, heels clicking on flagstone, gathering audience. She arrives at Simone's table and places both palms flat on it, the body language of power, of someone who has always been the largest presence in every room. She leans down to eye level. I'm going to say this once, she says. I have a lawyer on his way right now. Douglas Price, Price Whitmore and Associates. 31 years handling property law in this county. Whatever you think you have in those documents, whatever game this is, he will dismantle it in 10 minutes. She pauses for emphasis. And then I am going to make sure every attorney in 100 miles knows your name. Simone looks up from her legal pad. That's fine, she says. I'd very much like to meet him. Something in her tone, the complete, unperformed absence of fear, lands incorrectly for Cordelia. It is the response of someone who is not bluffing. It is the response of someone who has sat across a table from considerably more intimidating adversaries and remained entirely unbothered. Cordelia straightens. Take all the notes you want. You're documenting your own embarrassment. She walks away. The crowd that has gathered around the table, drawn by the irresistible gravity of public conflict, now becomes an audience. They do what audiences always do when given permission, they get louder, and crueler, and more creative in their contempt. Garrison Alt makes his way over, bourbon still in hand, his face arranged in the expression of a man delivering a verdict. Whatever she's planning, it won't work. You can't just walk onto private property with a briefcase full of papers and claim it's yours. This isn't some third world court. She's taking notes, Blythe observes, as if this is suspicious behavior. Who takes notes at a wedding? Someone building a lawsuit, Pamela says. That's what this is. She's going to sue for emotional distress or something equally absurd, and she needs a paper trail. Simone writes something on her legal pad. She underlines it. What is she writing about us? Someone demands. You can't record private conversations without consent. Simone looks up briefly. I'm not recording anything. I'm observing. Observing what? She considers the question with more genuine attention than it deserves. Behavior, she says. How people treat those they perceive as having no power over them. This lands badly, the way the truth tends to land when it arrives at inconvenient moments. There is a brief, uncomfortable silence before the crowd reorganizes itself around collective outrage. The nerve. Amateur psychology. She's trying to make us feel bad for enforcing basic property laws. Cordelia, from across the reception, watches the scene with satisfaction. Her lawyer is on the way. Her guests are unified. The narrative is hers. She cannot see yet that the narrative is about to be rewritten. Marcus Thorne arrives through the gate at 4:17 in the afternoon. He is 38 years old, compact and deliberate in the way of men who have trained their bodies to be instruments of their judgment. He has 15 years of law enforcement behind him, organized crime, public corruption, 2 years on loan to the FBI field office in Manhattan. He is currently a detective with the Dutchess County Sheriff's Department. He was at a retirement party 1 mile up the road when Raymond's call reached him. He comes through the gate in a dark jacket and tie, badge on his belt, hands in pockets, and performs the automatic inventory of the scene that detectives perform without being conscious of it. 300 guests. White tents, string lights. The cluster of people around a lone figure at a table near the reception's edge. The body language of the cluster. The particular, unmistakable stillness of the figure at its center. He crosses the lawn. He sees her face. He stops walking. 3 full seconds of stillness, which for Marcus Thorne is the equivalent of another man's sharp intake of breath and audible gasp, and 2 steps backward. "Oh," he says. Quietly. To himself. In the tone of a man who has just arrived at a situation that is significantly larger than the situation he was told he was arriving at. He continues walking. He reaches her table. He looks at her. "Judge Osei," he says. Cordelia arrives at his shoulder in under 5 seconds. "You know her?" Marcus looks at Cordelia. Then at Simone, who gives him the smallest perceptible motion of her head, "Not yet." "Yes," Marcus says, very carefully. "I know who she is." "Then you know she has been trespassing, harassing my guests, intimidating my staff, and refusing to leave after being removed twice. I need you to arrest her." "I can't do that." "You are a law enforcement officer." "I'm fully aware, Mrs. Voss." "Then act like one." She draws herself up, and the authority that comes off her in that moment is real and substantial and has been working on people her entire life. "My husband's father sat on the county board for 15 years. My son-in-law's family has long-standing relationships with the senior staff of the sheriff's office. I am not without options here." Marcus looks at her with the patient expression of a man who has heard this exact sentence, in various formulations, many times, and stopped being impressed by it years ago. "Make those calls," he says. "I'd encourage it." Cordelia blinks. "I beg your pardon?" "Call everyone you know. Get as many people here as possible." A brief pause. "For some of us, more witnesses would be ideal." The crowd shifts. Something in the way Marcus Thorne is speaking, each word placed deliberately, carrying weight, communicates that the information he is withholding is not small. "Who is she?" Pamela asks, from the outer edge of the circle. "If she's someone important, just tell us. Stop being theatrical." Marcus looks at Simone. She gives a different nod this time, more permission in it. "Close enough." "She is someone," Marcus says, with the care of a man defusing something, with considerably more authority than anyone at this wedding is currently aware of. "Authority." Garrison Alt laughs. It is the laugh of a man who has never doubted his own authority in his life and therefore cannot take the word seriously when applied to someone he doesn't recognize. What sort of authority could she possibly have? She arrived in a Camry. "It's a Camry," Simone confirms, not looking up. Brief, startled laughter from the edges of the crowd. Quickly suppressed. But it moves through the group like a small shift in temperature. Cordelia is not laughing. Her eyes are narrow and still, and she is watching Marcus Thorne the way you watch something that might be dangerous, not yet moving, but changed. "Stop speaking in riddles," she says. "Either arrest her or go back to your party." "I'm staying," Marcus says simply. "I'd like to see how this unfolds." The word unfolds does something to the room. It implies a shape already determined. It implies Marcus Thorne knows what that shape is. Marcus moves to a quiet corner with his phone. He makes 2 calls. He waits on hold with the patience of a man whose career has been built in the spaces between information arriving. He reads something. Reads it again. Adjusts his expression carefully before he turns back around. He returns to the center of the reception. Walks directly to Cordelia. Holds his phone toward her, screen up. "Dutchess County Property Records," he says. "Public database. Anyone can pull it." Cordelia doesn't look at the screen. She looks at Marcus's face, and something about what she sees there makes her not want to look at the screen. 47 Oversight Ridge Road, Millbrook, Marcus says. Property originally purchased 1927, Solomon Oversight. Passed by inheritance to Robert Oversight, 1959. Passed by inheritance to, he pauses for less than a second, and that pause is its own kind of announcement. Simone Oversight, 2001. The silence that arrives is the specific silence of 300 people simultaneously stopping their conversations. That is not possible, Cordelia says. Very flat. No recorded sale to the Voss family. No recorded transfer of any kind. Property taxes continuously paid since 2001 by the Oversight Family Trust. He lowers the phone. I confirmed this with 2 separate county clerks. They pulled the physical files. The records go to 1927 and they are consistent throughout. He looks at her steadily. Mrs. Voss, do you have documentation showing your family's ownership of this property? For the first time this afternoon, Cordelia has no answer ready. It's in the house, she says. Her voice has lost its certainty. In the safe. Reginald manages that. Perhaps you should retrieve it. Simone stands. She does it slowly, without ceremony, in the way someone stands when they have been patient for a long time and are now simply ready. She carries her folder to the nearest table and lays documents out, one by one, with the calm efficiency of someone who has done this in courtrooms across the Eastern District for 17 years. Original deed, 1927. A large, aged document, the ink brown with time, the signature bold and deliberate. Note the property boundaries. Note the oak tree at the northeast corner referenced as a survey marker. It is the same tree with the carved initials you can see from where you are standing. She places a second document. Inheritance, 1959. New York Surrogate Court. Properly filed and stamped. A third. Inheritance to me, 2001. Same court, same stamps, same chain of title. A fourth. 22 years of property tax records. Not one missed payment. She pauses. She places the fifth document. It is different from the others in every way that matters: newer paper, different letterhead, a different quality of intention behind it. And this, she says. Douglas Price arrives through the gate at a near run. He is 63, silver-haired, his briefcase gripped in both hands, his face prepared for a fight that he is, within approximately 4 seconds of arriving, going to understand he is not equipped for. He pushes through the outer edge of the crowd, sees Cordelia's face, and moves toward her. Then he sees Simone. He stops walking. His briefcase drops 2 inches before his grip catches it. Cordelia, he says. His voice is different than the voice he uses for reassurance. I just got I came as fast as He stops because Simone has turned toward him and he is looking at her face. Douglas, she says. That same extraordinary quietness. The complete absence of anything dramatic in it, which is itself the most dramatic thing in the room. He swallows. A visible, physical swallow. Judge Oversight. Judge. A current of electricity through the crowd, moving from the center outward, reaching the far tables before the people at the center have fully processed the word. What did he say? Blythe's voice, from somewhere in the back. Did he say judge? Someone's champagne flute makes contact with a table. The sound is very loud in the sudden near silence. Marcus Thorne removes his badge from his belt. He holds it in his open palm, not a threat, not a display, simply a clarification of context. Simone Oversight, he says. His voice carries without effort. United States District Judge. Eastern District of New York. Appointed 6 years ago. Confirmed unanimously by the Senate Judiciary Committee. He lets that settle for one beat. Prior to appointment, federal prosecutor, Southern District of New York, 7 years. Prior to that, civil rights and property law attorney, 15 years. Valedictorian, Columbia Law School. The crowd is completely still. Garrison Alt's bourbon glass is suspended halfway to his lips. It stays there. He appears to have forgotten it exists. Pamela has stopped filming. Blythe has taken 4 steps toward the parking lot. She is now outside the ring of guests and moving with the focused intent of someone who wants very much not to be remembered as having been present. Douglas Price steps close to Cordelia and speaks in a rapid undertone that carries further than he intends. She handles federal crimes. Organized crime, public corruption, financial fraud. Her conviction rate is 96%. She sentenced the entire Caravano syndicate last year, 12 defendants. She also, he stops. Moistens his lips. She handles federal property fraud. Specifically. It is one of her areas. Cordelia turns to him very slowly. We need to stop talking, Douglas says. Right now. Immediately. All of us. Cordelia's mouth opens. Please, Douglas says. And something in the urgency of it closes her mouth. Simone picks up the 5th document. She holds it for a moment before she speaks, looking at it with an expression that carries something no legal argument can carry, something that belongs to the person rather than the judge. 22 years ago, she says, and her voice has deepened, the way rivers deepen in certain places where the bed drops away and the current slows without losing its power. My father received a letter at his home in Harlem. He was 69 years old. He had spent his entire life in the faith that the things his father built would endure. He had grown up in this house during the summers. He brought me here every summer when I was a child. He knew every room of it, every garden path, every stone. She pauses. He trusted official things. He trusted that a document on legal letterhead meant something legal had happened. She turns the document over. The letterhead reads Voss Property Management LLC. The crowd goes very quiet. This letter informed my father that the estate at 47 Oversight Ridge Road had been seized to cover outstanding debts under a provision of a legal instrument. Her voice is steady and exact. The legal instrument referenced in this letter does not exist. The debts referenced in this letter do not exist. No seizure occurred. No legal proceeding was initiated. No court was notified. There was only this letter, on official-looking letterhead, sent to a 69-year-old man who had always trusted official-looking things, because the world had always worked that way for him, and he had no reason to believe it would stop. The weight of it moves through the crowd slowly, finding the gaps. My father spent the remaining 3 years of his life believing he had lost our family's home. He died without understanding what had actually happened here. He died believing he had failed his own father's legacy. She sets the letter on the table. By the time I graduated from Columbia Law, I understood what had been done. By the time I became a federal judge, I had everything I needed to prove it. A pause that lands like a stone in still water. It took me until now to come back. Reginald Voss, who has been a peripheral figure throughout this entire afternoon, the man near the bar, the quiet husband, the man whose name is on the letterhead, sits down in a chair. Nobody offered it to him. He simply sits down, and his face is the face of a man who has been waiting for something to arrive for a long time and has not been able to prevent it and is now experiencing, more than anything else, the exhaustion of the wait being finally over. Cordelia looks at her husband. She looks at him with 22 years of not asking questions, and the understanding of why she didn't ask them, and the understanding of what not asking made her complicit in, and the specific horror of someone who has been genuinely convinced of their own righteousness for 2 decades and is watching that conviction take itself apart in front of 300 people. I didn't know, she says. You didn't ask, Simone says. As a fact. Without heat. That distinction, somehow, makes it worse than any accusation could. Camden Voss arrives from the ceremony area still in his wedding suit, slim charcoal jacket, white boutonniere wilted at the lapel, the face of a man who has heard the rise and fall of his mother's voice from 200 yards away and has come to find out what it means. He is 29 years old, broad-shouldered, and marked by things he has been through in the way that good materials are marked, not ruined by them, but changed, the surface telling the truth about the history. There are things in his eyes that were not there 5 years ago. He comes through the tent. The crowd parts for the groom. He sees the woman at the table near the reception's edge, standing with a black leather folder in her hands and an expression of judicial calm, and the color goes out of his face so completely and so quickly that Isabel, his new wife, still in her gown, who has been at his side all afternoon, reaches out and touches his arm. "Camden," she says. "What is it?" He does not answer her immediately. He walks forward. He moves through the crowd until he is standing in front of Simone Osei, and he looks at her the way a person looks at someone to whom they owe a debt that will not fit inside any of the ordinary containers for debt. "Judge Osei," he says. His voice is very controlled, which tells you how hard he is working to keep it that way. "Hello, Camden." Something in Simone's expression shifts, not softer exactly, but more personal. Less judicial. "Congratulations on your marriage." Cordelia moves toward her son. "Camden, this woman is trying to take our home. She's claiming." "Mom." 2 words. His voice, and in it something she has not heard before, something that has been building for 3 years and has arrived now, today, at this moment, because there is no other moment it could arrive in. "Please." She stops. Camden turns to the assembled guests. He turns toward them deliberately, not reluctantly, the way someone turns toward the thing they've been meaning to do for a long time and could not find the right occasion for and have suddenly run out of occasions to miss. 3 years ago, he says, I was arraigned in federal court on money laundering charges. I was 26 years old. I had made choices I knew were wrong and made them anyway because I had spent my entire life learning that money and connections soften every consequence. He does not look at his father. I was right about that for a long time. And then I wasn't. The reception has gone absolutely silent. The evidence against me was overwhelming. My attorney was direct. I was looking at 15 to 20 years. I would have been 45 when I got out, if I was well behaved. He pauses. Judge Osei presided over my case. She reviewed every document. She heard all of it. She had every legal and moral justification to make an example of me. The evidence and the law both supported it. Isabel lowers her champagne glass to the table beside her, untouched. She sentenced me to 2 years of supervised probation, 240 hours of community service, full financial restitution to every person and institution I had defrauded, and mandatory financial ethics counseling. He looks at Simone directly, and what is in his face is real and unguarded and belongs to a person who has stopped performing recovery and is simply living it. She said on the record that she believed first-time offenders given structured consequences rather than incarceration showed a statistically significant higher rate of genuine change. She said she was making a bet on me. He swallows. She said she hoped she was right. Nobody speaks. I spent 240 hours at a family shelter in the South Bronx. I met people whose circumstances were partly the result of the kind of financial crimes I committed. I rebuilt my understanding of what my choices cost other people at a cellular level. I came back and I told Isabel everything, before I proposed, before anything, because I had learned that you cannot build a real life on top of a foundation of hidden things. He takes his wife's hand. I am not who I was at 26. The only reason I had the chance to become someone different is standing in front of me right now. For a long moment, the only sound is the fountain in the reflecting pool, and the very distant sound of wind in the oaks. Then Cordelia Voss says, in a voice stripped of everything she has been using as armor all afternoon, "She saved your life." "Yes," Camden says. "And we spent this afternoon treating her like a criminal on her own property." Cordelia Voss looks at her hands. She has been looking at them periodically throughout this afternoon as if they might contain instructions she has not yet received. They are 62 years old. They have held champagne glasses at 1,000 events like this one. They have signed checks and contracts and directed staff with impatient gestures. They have held the things that matter and put them down again without ever understanding what they were holding. She looks at the reflecting pool. At the Lion's Head fountain at its center, a piece she always assumed the previous owners installed because it matched the other stonework. Your grandfather brought that from Accra. She has walked past it every day for 22 years. She looks at the oak tree at the garden's eastern edge. Even from here she can see what she now understands was always there, 2 letters carved dark and deep into the bark. Permanent. Older than she is. Older than everything she has brought to this property. She looks at the iron gate. At the crest. At the river beneath the roots of the oak. At the letters in the base of the design that have been there since 1924. She looks at Simone Osei. And Cordelia Voss, who has not sincerely apologized for anything in perhaps 30 years, opens her mouth. "I owe you an apology," she says. Her voice is not steady. She does not try to make it steady. "I owe you several." She stops. She starts again, more carefully. "What I said to you today, what I called you, what I implied, the way I treated you in front of these people, there is no version of it I can justify. Not ignorance, not stress, not any of it." Simone waits. Her face is still. "Your family built this home. Your grandfather's hands are in the stones of this garden, in those roses on the wall, in that fountain I walked past this morning without once wondering where it came from. I benefited from what was done to your family for 22 years without asking how it was possible." She looks at the ground. Because asking would have been inconvenient. Because not asking was easy. Because there are things you accept about your life when accepting them is easy enough. She looks up. "I am sorry for all of it. For today most specifically. For treating you as though you were something to be managed and removed, when you were standing in your own grandfather's garden." Ezra Donatelli has come from the garden path. He stands at its edge with his cap held over his heart, his old face wet and entirely unashamed about it. Simone is quiet for a long moment. She looks at the estate behind them. The roofline above the oaks. The window where the housekeepers were watching. The south wall where her mother's roses grow in climbing columns of dark red, tended by a man who kept them for her for 22 years without being asked. She looks at Camden, who is looking back at her with the clarity of a person who has been changed by his own consequences and is grateful for exactly that. She looks at the 5th document on the table. The fraudulent letter. The hinge point of everything. The thing that was sent to a 69-year-old man who trusted official things, and took from him the last 3 years of his life and left him believing he had failed someone he loved. "I am not going to pursue criminal charges against your family," she says. The exhale from the assembled crowd is audible as a physical event. However, she opens the folder one final time and removes a single document, clean, formal, prepared long before today. This property will be transferred back to the Osei Family Trust, formally and completely, within 60 days. The legal instrument is already prepared and witnessed. She looks at Douglas Price. "Douglas. You'll process it. It is not a question." He nods, with the expression of a man relieved to have clear instructions. Ezra Donatelli's employment and pension are guaranteed for the duration of his life, administered by the trust. That is not subject to negotiation. Camden nods before his mother can respond. The Osei family crest will be restored to the gate within 30 days. My grandfather commissioned it in 1924. It should never have been covered. Her voice holds a quality difficult to name precisely, grief and resolution breathing the same air. The property will remain available to the Voss family as a private residence during a transitional period of 2 years, while alternative arrangements are made. My family requests nothing further during that time. Cordelia makes a sound too small and too controlled to be called a sob, but too genuine to be anything else. Additionally, Simone's voice is steady and final. Beginning next year, this estate will host an annual scholarship in the name of Solomon Osei, for first-generation college students from Dutchess County. My great-grandfather came to this country from the Gold Coast in 1921 with nothing but the kind of faith that makes people build things meant to last. This scholarship will mean that something he built continues to open doors long after everyone in this tent is gone. She closes the folder. She picks up her briefcase. She looks around the reception one final time, at the tents and lights and guests who came for a society wedding and received something else entirely. At the staff members visible in windows and at garden edges, watching. At Raymond near the gate, still holding it open from the inside, as if he understood all along that this was where the afternoon was going. At Ezra, who has not moved, whose cap is still pressed over his heart. My father used to say, she says, that the measure of a person is not what they do with power when everyone important is watching. It is what they do with it when they think no one important is. She looks at the crowd slowly, the sweep of a woman who has looked at rooms full of people deciding their fates for the past 6 years and who has never once been confused about what her obligation to those rooms actually is. Think about who was watching today. Think carefully about what they saw. She walks through the reception. The crowd parts, not with the speed of people making way for someone being removed, but with the instinct of people who have understood, too late or just in time depending on where they were standing, that they are in the presence of something that commands respect not by demanding it, but by being entirely indifferent to whether it is given. She reaches the gate. She stops. Her hand rests on the iron scrollwork, the oak, the river, the roots, the letters. She traces it one last time. Then Simone Osei walks through the gate, crosses the road, and drives away from her grandfather's property in the gold September light. The crest was restored on a Wednesday morning in November, 6 weeks to the day after the wedding. It rained. The installer worked under a tarp, the sound of the rain on the canvas coming in irregular rhythms that had no pattern but filled the silence well enough. Ezra Donatelli stood in the road the whole time, his cap in his hands. He had arranged to be there. He had told no one he was coming and asked no one's permission, because neither had ever been required for anything that mattered to him. When the tarp came down, the oak tree with the river running beneath it gleamed wet and clean against the gray November sky, the original iron polished back to its original depth of black, the design precise and deliberate and exactly as it had been commissioned in 1924 by a man who crossed an ocean and built something with his own hands on ground he purchased fairly and intended to leave to his children forever. The initials SO in the base of the design were legible from 20 feet. Ezra stood looking at the gate for a long time. He thought about 42 years on this land. About what it means to tend something that has been taken from the people it belongs to. About the weight of what you know and what you stay silent about and the long, costly distance between those two things. About the things you tell yourself so that the silence stays comfortable. About the morning he had turned his father's stories about the Osei family over in his hands like smooth stones for 40 years, carrying them the way you carry things you are keeping for someone who will come back for them eventually. He thought about a girl who used to come every summer and could name every rose her mother had planted. Who sat in this garden with her father and was told, "Your great-grandfather made that mark on the oak tree, and it will be there long after both of us are gone." He thought about a woman who came back. Not broken. Not diminished. Not worn down by 22 years of being kept from the thing that was hers by right of blood and deed and every law that was ever supposed to matter. Just certain. Just absolute. Just exactly herself, standing on her grandfather's land like someone who had never, not for a single day in 22 years, forgotten whose ground it was. That is the thing about roots that go deep enough. You can cut away everything above the surface. You can build over it, cover it, file away the name from the brass plate, weld new letters over the old ones in the iron. You can send a letter on official-looking letterhead to a man who trusts official-looking things, and take from him the years he had left, and move into his house, and host your parties in his garden, and walk past his fountain every morning without ever asking where it came from. But what is planted deep enough does not disappear. It waits. It grows in the dark, patient and entirely beyond the reach of people who have convinced themselves they own the soil. Until someone comes back to it. And it knows them. And they know it. And nothing that was ever done to separate them, turns out to have been permanent after all. Real authority doesn't announce itself. It simply stands where it belongs and waits for the truth to arrive.